And hello, yes, we are live. Okay, so this is the last lesson in the decimals unit, and it's going to be word problem style, sort of. I will clarify soon. First, I will say, here's a dog. She is getting very shaggy, and she needs it because it's very cold outside. There's very crunchy snow. And not really good snow to play in, but we'll get another snowfall and then we'll start playing outside and she will love it. She's doing a lot of high stepping, bouncing around in the snow. Okay, I'm going to put her down where she will behave while I teach. Lie down, lie down. Stay, okay. Now, no sports jersey today. It's cold down here, so I'm wearing a cotton t-shirt because that's warmer with my sweater. And I'll take the sweater off if I need to. What else is going on? Okay, so the theme of this non-word problem, the word problem-y lesson is craft fair. I participated in a craft fair a few days ago, but I decided to make all of my problems and calculations about an upcoming craft fair. I'm sort of pretending it's all happened and that I know what's going to happen, but I don't. I'm making it up. So it's a big situation because I was inspired to do this because when I find myself actually making calculations involving decimals, well, preparing for a craft fair and then dealing with the money if you're selling things at the craft fair, etc., is really involving a lot of decimal calculations, so it works. So I'm talking about a craft fair I'm going to be doing in the springtime. And of course, this is actually going to happen. I'm already starting to prepare. And what I'm doing is I'm coming up with ideas of what type of items I'd like to make that people might be interested in buying in the springtime. And that's a bit of a challenge. There are holidays, there are springtime holidays, but it's hard for us to prepare for specific holidays because we don't know yet what the date is for the craft fair. So instead of aiming at holiday stuff, we're looking more at seasonal stuff. And because at springtime, there's going to be useful things that go with spring, and it won't matter exactly what date the craft fair lands on. So my main idea is I really want to do this, is make planters. So we're talking about wooden planters that are around this big, that people put outdoors and they're able to put a plant in a pot inside it. When I give the information, instead of writing the paragraphs you do for word problems, because I don't have time with the time limit here and the idea of doing it all on a chalkboard, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the information we need here, just in point form. But then we're going to behave as if we're going a word problem and trying to figure out what calculation we need, and then we're going to show our steps of our calculation. So these planters are going to be made from pickets. Treated pickets. Treated because that way it lasts longer outdoors. What's a picket? It's a board. They come in different lengths, but I'm buying 6-foot long boards because they fit in my car. And then I'm going to take these 6-foot long boards and I'm going to cut them into shorter lengths that I need for making the planter. And the pieces I need, this is the first fact we have to get into, the pieces I need are 10.4 inches in length. And I'll just write that, pieces 10.4 inches. But we have to do a little calculation right away because I do want to do the calculation in inches, but the length of the board is 6 feet. So we're going to have a very quick little calculation, which I'll do way over here. 6 feet times 12 inches is equal to 72 inches per picket. Okay, now we have set ourselves up to do a decimal problem. If I need pieces 10.4 inches in length and I'm cutting them off of a board that's 72 inches in length, well, how many pieces of the right length will I get? And we'll find that answer by dividing. Yes, dividing. So we're going to do 72 divided by 10.4. And that is our first real calculation, our first real decimal calculation of this scenario. As I go through this scenario, I actually have 15 calculations I want to do, not counting little simple ones like this. So how do we do this? We know how to do this. This is what we've been covering. This is a decimal division. But today we're not only doing division. We're doing all the operations that involve decimals. So I have to move this decimal. It has to jump one position to the right. The decimal in the 72 would be here, but that's also jumping one position to the right, so it's going to be here, and that means I need a decimal right above it in my quotient when I get my answer. Does 104 fit into 7? No. Remember, this is not 10.4 anymore. It's now 104. We have corrected the position of the decimals. Does 104 fit into 72? No. But I need to put a 0 here. Does 104 fit into 720? Yes. How many times? Would it fit 7 times? That would be lucky. 7 times 104 is going to be 7 times 100 is 700, and 7 times 4 is 28. No, it will not fit 7 times. It's going to be a 6. Now we're doing 6 times 104, which is going to give me 624. And we subtract. When we subtract, we are going to get 10 minus 4 is 6. I borrowed 1, so this is now a 1. 11 minus 2 is 9. I borrowed again. I'm not showing all the steps for the subtractions inside the division because it gets too cluttered. But 720 minus 624 is 96. I'm not finished. I want to know a little bit more detail. Am I getting 6 point very small, like 6.1 of these 10.4 inch pieces out of this picket? Or am I getting 6 point something big? How much of a scrap do I have left over? I don't have to keep on calculating forever. I just want to know a little bit more detail in my answer. So that means I'm going to put another 0 here, which means there's another 0 there. This line's long enough. How many times does 104 fit into 960? Will it fit 9 times? I think so. 9 times 100 is 900. 9 times 4 is 36. 936. It does work. So it's 6.9. I almost got 7. See that coming. I almost got 7 pieces out of the picket, but not quite. I'm going to have to figure out something to do with that scrap, because that's part of the math you end up doing. If you can use your scraps for something useful that you can sell, well, then it lowers the cost of all the things that you're selling, and that allows you to lower your selling price, etc. So 9 times 104 was 936. We'll subtract. I'm not going to just stop, even though 6.9 is a close enough answer. 10 minus 6 is 4. I borrowed, so this is 5 minus 3. That's 2. We have 24 left over. But I'm going to stop. 6.9 is my answer for how many pieces I will get per picket. What's the next calculation I have to do? Okay, we have to reach for the clipboard to figure out what's going on next. What I want to know next is how long is that piece that's left over? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a multiplication. I'll do it here. I have room. I don't have to erase yet. If I'm getting 6 pieces, 6 full pieces, so I guess I should say 6.9 pieces, therefore 6 pieces. So we're doing that rounding thing where we round down. We're not rounding with the normal rounding rules because rounding up to 7 would give a misleading answer. No, even though it's 6.9, it's almost 7, we're still saying, well, that means we get 6 pieces. And then I take those 6 pieces and I multiply them by their length, which is 10.4. And we have a decimal multiplication. We line it up the way we line up multiplications with decimals, so that the last digit in the 2 numbers is lined up. And we're not trying to line up the decimals themselves, and we're not putting a decimal in the answer yet. 6 times 4 is 24. I'm writing the 4, I'm carrying a 2. But 6 times 0 is 0, plus the 2 I carried, the 2 goes here. Finally, 6 times 1 is 6. I have 624, but I have 1 decimal digit, so that means I need 1 digit to the right of the decimal in my answer. 62.4 inches is the total length of the 6 pieces. I still have another thing to do here, because I want to know how long the scrap is, and I can get that with a subtraction. So we're going to take 72 and we're going to subtract 62.4. Now this is a subtraction, so we do want to line up the decimals. I'm going to show this decimal, and we're subtracting 62.4, so we have to line it up like this. And that means I want to show a 0 here. Decimals are lined up. The decimal and the answer will be right below. It's a subtraction. We use the subtraction rules. And we're borrowing 10 minus 4. That means I'm borrowing so I can show it because this is subtraction. It's not in the middle of a division. So that 2 will become a 1. And this 0 will become a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. And then I have 1 minus 2. I can't do that either. I have to borrow. So this 7 is going to become a 6. And this 1 is turning into an 11. 11 minus 2 is 9. And then 6 minus 6 cancels. We have 9.6 inches for the length of the scrap. We already know. I'll say in brackets I'll put 6 because that was the answer to this thing. 6 of those 10.4 inch pieces. But I'm also going to say scrap 9.6 inches because we will need this measurement later for further calculations, and it's time for me to do some erasing. Everything else we know. Okay, so let's do an erase. I'm going to check the time and see how this is going. I really have no idea about the time with this lesson, but it being one big situation with 15 calculations, I'm not sure if I'll fit them all in 1 hour or if I will finish them all before an hour is up, and then I'll have to make up a couple of extra things to fill up the time. Because I do like the lessons to be an hour long, or at least quite close to it. So, I'm erasing all this, and we're moving on to our next calculation. But we have already done 3 that count, not counting the little itty bitty ones. So we did a decimal division, a decimal multiplication, and a decimal subtraction already. Now, what am I going to do with the scrap? That's the next part of this idea. The truth is, I don't want to only sell one type of item at a craft fair, or even 2. I'd really like to have 5 or 6 ideas at least of different items I can sell, because you never know what people are going to want to buy at a craft fair. So for all I know, I might go to the craft fair with a whole bunch of these planters and no one buys even one. But I can make something else out of the scrap, and maybe that will be popular. So Vanessa, that's Bunny, she's upstairs. She also does crafts, of course. And some of her crafts start with a piece of wood. And this comes in very handy with me having scraps from my pieces of wood. So Vanessa makes gnomes, little garden gnomes, little decorations that people put in their gardens. And that's a nice springtime thing that's not associated with any particular holiday. In fact, it's spring, summer, fall thing, really. And even winter, because gnomes make good decorations in the winter. But she makes the gnomes small. And I asked her how long a piece of wood from these pickets would she need to be able to make a gnome. And she needs pieces 2.3 inches long. So I'm writing gnome, 2.3 inches. Okay, we have a starting point to do some more calculations to try and make this whole idea work. So how many gnomes will she be able to make with the scrap from each picket? Well, we already figured out that the scrap is 9.6 inches long, so that means we're going to do another decimal division. So 9.6 is being divided by 2.3. Okay, but we have to correct the position of the decimal again. This is jumping one place to the right, so therefore this is as well. My decimal is actually going to be here, and then I put it up above in my answer. I'm all organized. I'm now doing 96 divided by 23. And how many times does 23 fit into 96? It was almost 5, but no, it's going to be 4 times. 4 times 23, 4 times 20 is 80, 4 times 3 is 12, 80 plus 12 is 92. We nearly got there, we're subtracting. When we subtract, we get 4, but I want to know more detail in my answer, even if I know, well, it's going to be 4. I'm going to get 4 gnomes from each scrap, from each picket. So I'll go one step further. That means I'll put a 0 here. That 0 carries down. How many times does 23 fit into 40? Only once. Finish my calculation. I have 17, but I'm not going to go any further. So 4.1 gnomes. Therefore, 4 gnomes. Will this fit? I think it will. So I'm putting 4 of that answer over there, and yes, it does fit in the rectangle. That's good. And we've done yet another decimal division, another decimal calculation as part of this big scenario. What do I need to do next? I need to know how many of those 10.4 inch pieces I need for a planter. And it turns out because I use two 10.4 pieces on one side, but then the four sides of the planter, which when you look at it from above is square, I will need 2 for each of the 4 sides. I need 8 of them, but on the bottom, I'll take one of those 10.4 pieces and I'll put it across the bottom, because that way when someone puts a plant in it, it doesn't go all the way down and touch the ground. It balances on that piece of wood, and then when you water it, the water is able to go through on the bottom. Okay, interesting. So I need 9 altogether. So that's an important piece of information. I'm going to put it here on this list. 9 pieces per planter. I don't want to give too much detail because I don't have room, but it's 9 of the 10.4 inch pieces we're talking about, not of the 2.3 inch pieces. So that means 1 picket isn't going to be enough to make a planter, because we already figured out that I can get 6 of those pieces from a picket. I'm going to have to cut up a second picket to get enough so that I have the 9 and I can make the first planter. What's next? Well, how many pickets will I need to make 2 planters? Well, if you get 6 per picket, but you need 9, well then 3 pickets, where's my calculation? This is not one of the decimal calculations. It's 3 pickets times 6 pieces per picket equals 18, but then 18 pieces divided by 2, or I'll say divided by 9, it makes more sense. 18 pieces from 3 pickets, if we divide it by the 9 pieces I need per picket, means I'm going to get 2 planters from 3 pickets. And that's important, so I'm going to write it down. 2 planters from 3 pickets. This might not fit, so I'll just put pick period as stands for pickets. Okay, all right, so I get 3 pickets. This is what the sort of thinking we have to do when we're doing this sort of project. I get 3 pickets, I make a bunch of cuts, I get the 18 pieces I need to make 2 planters, but because it was 3 pickets, and I get 4 gnomes per picket, that means from 3 pickets I'm going to get 12 gnomes. Hopefully these gnomes are popular and they sell well, because I'm going to end up with a lot of them. That's the end of page 1. What's my next calculation? Okay, here's where the money gets involved. I'm going to have to do some erasing. The cost of a picket is $6.33. Why so much? It's just one simple board because it's treated. And so it costs a little bit more. And maybe I could shop around and find a place where I see a better price, but that's all part of the process as well. And it means when you're doing all of this math, sometimes you end up redoing it as you're shopping. And it's so much decimal calculations that end up happening, which is just right for what we are talking about right now, so we are not complaining. Okay, I've decided I'm going to buy 27 pickets. So I'll write that here, 27 pickets. Why am I choosing 27? Because it's a multiple of 3. And because since I need 3 pickets to make 2 planters, with 27 pickets I get 9 sets of 3, but 9 times 2 planters per set of 3, I'm going to be able to make 18 planters. So I'll write 27 pickets, 18 planters. Now, why did I choose this number? It's kind of arbitrary, meaning I just chose a number I liked the idea of. I guess I'm thinking about how much time I have before the craft fair and the amount of time I have to make all of these planters, because it's not really as simple as just doing the measurements and the calculations, is it? You also have to cut all of those pieces of wood, and then you have to fasten them together, and there's other steps in the process. All of it's interesting and all of it's fun, and that's why I do it. Is this a business? No, not for me and not for Bunny either. For both of us, this is a hobby. And the reason we want to sell things at craft fairs is if we manage to sell enough of the things, then all of the wood that I have to buy ends up being free. So it becomes a free hobby. Plus, a lot of the materials she uses for her crafts also end up being free. So when we do a craft fair, after I see what's sold, I'll give Vanessa her share of the money, and then she's able to go to the stores where you buy stuff for crafts and buy all the things that she needs. And I go to the big box wood store and I buy the wood that I need. So it's all part of the process and it's all part of the fun. Okay, I need to erase because we have to do another calculation. I'm curious to know, even though it's not a decimal calculation, now that I know I'm buying 27 pickets, how many gnomes am I going to get? So that's a fast little multiplication that doesn't involve decimals. I'll do it over here. 27 pickets times 4 gnomes per picket, which is information we already calculated, equals 108 gnomes. Okay, next. If I sell the gnomes for 75 cents each, and I'm hoping I'll sell all of the gnomes because 75 cents is such a nice low price. That is one of the things I try to do on purpose at the craft fair, is have something, at least something, that's such a low price that people can buy handfuls of them if they want. And so if I'm selling them for 75 cents each, how much money am I going to earn from the gnomes? We also have to calculate how much is it costing me for all these pickets. I'm going to do that first. So 27 pickets times $6.33. How much is it costing me just for the wood? It's some decimal multiplication. Is this the first decimal multiplication? No, it isn't. I think the only one I haven't done yet is an addition. I have to make sure to do an addition somewhere in here. And yes, I see one lower on the page. So multiplying. We line up the last digit in the two numbers without trying to line up the decimals. We don't put a decimal in the answer. 7 times 3 is 21. I'm carrying a 2. 7 times 3 is 21 plus the 2 I carried is 23. I'm carrying a 2 again. 7 times 6 is 42 plus the 2 I carried is 44. We're not finished. We now have to do this 2, so I need to put a 0 here. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 6 is 12. I don't have to show the carrying because I got to the end, so it fits right here. And now we're adding. We're not really adding decimals because we haven't placed our decimal yet. 1 plus 0 is 1. 3 plus 6 is 9. 4 plus 6 is 10. So that 0 carried the 1. 4 plus 2 is 6 plus the 1 I carried is 7. I have $170.91 that it's going to cost me for the 27 pickets. So I'll write that right underneath 27 pickets here. 170.91. Okay, but how much money will I make? See, when I'm thinking about that, that sounds expensive. I have to spend $170.91, and I'm going to get 18 planters. But then I start thinking, well, what if I don't sell all of them? What if I hardly sell any of them? One of the things that makes me decide to go for it and buy this many is the idea that I know I'm going to sell some of these gnomes. So how much money would I earn if I sold all of the gnomes? I take that into account when I'm deciding what to buy. So that's another multiplication. I'll do it right here. We are selling the gnomes for 75 cents, and we will have 108 of them. So if they all sell, we'll get the total amount that I would get by doing this multiplication. 8 times 5 is 40, so I write the 0, I carry the 4. 8 times 7 is 56, plus the 4 I carried is 60, so I'm writing a 0 and I'm carrying a 6. But 8 times 0 is 0, plus the 6 I carried, I just put a 6 here. Then, after the 8, I need a 0. And I'm doing this, but this is an interesting one. I don't know if I did one of these as I was doing multiplications for a couple of weeks. Is there any need to continue? Because 0 times all these numbers is going to just give me a bunch of zeros. So instead I'm skipping over to this 1, which means I need 2 zeros. Remember, the 1 has 2 digits after it, so I have to put 2 zeros here. Then I can start multiplying this stuff by the 1. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 0 is 0. I don't have to write it. I didn't have to do any carrying for that part. And now I'm adding these two together. I get 0, 0. 11 carried the 1, so this is 81. Oh, I jumped into the answer rather quickly, didn't I? I have to talk about how that I have 2 decimal digits, so I need 2 decimal digits, and yes, it's $81. Gnomes. I want to put the information somewhere. I'm going to run out of room. 108 gnomes should get me $81. Okay, now I have a reason to do, what is it? A subtraction, a decimal subtraction. So I've got another one of those. That's good. I'm going to do some erasing, should I? No, I'll just do it right here. So we're going to take the $170.91 and we're going to subtract the $81 to figure out, if I manage to sell all the gnomes, how much am I still paying for the wood for the planters? And this is just a sort of a what-if calculation, because it's based on the idea that I'm selling all of the gnomes, and I don't know for sure that that's going to happen. So you can see how, as you're going through this experience, you keep on having to do the math over and over again, which is good. It means that you have to practice it. Okay, so I'm lining up a decimal subtraction, so I line up the decimals in the 2 numbers plus in the answer. 1 minus 0 is 1, 9 minus 0 is 9, 10 minus 1 is 9, I borrowed. And then 6 minus 8 I can't do, I have to borrow again. 16 minus 8 is 8. So I have $89.91 that I still have to pay for the wood for the planters, even if $81 from gnome sales took care of almost half of the cost of the picket. Interesting. What's the next calculation I feel like doing? Oh, here's a good one. If I sell all of the gnomes, so that the wood for the pickets only ends up costing $89.91, how much is the wood costing per planter? I need to erase to make room to do that calculation. I'll write the $89.91 somewhere. I'll just write it here. And the reason I want to do this, keeping track of all these little facts, is because sometimes you end up using some of this information more than once as you go through the process. But because of the erasing, which I have to do, but a student wouldn't do. A student would just move on to the next page and still be able to look back and see the previous calculations. This is just a way of organizing myself. So, erasing all of these calculations. If it's costing me $89.91, now why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want to have a feeling for how much the pickets are costing me so that I can decide how much I want to charge for them. Because I definitely want to charge more than they cost. I don't want to do this business at a loss, not that it's really a business, but I know at the same time, so I'm fighting between two things. I want to make a profit on each planter, but I also want to offer the planters at a nice low price so that they're attractive for people to buy. And I'd like to sell more of them. And I think about the consumer as well, because I'm also a consumer. If you see a planter and you realize you can afford it and you really like it, well, do you just want one? If you're going to put these planters in your yard, you might look or think of your yard and realize, well, actually, I have several different places I'd like to put those. If the planters are nice and affordable, then you're able to make that decision. You know what? I'm buying 2 of them, or I'm buying 4 of them. And I want to be able to do that for the customers, to make them affordable enough so that people have more flexibility in how they use them, and then you have happy customers. That's the sort of thinking that's going into all of this. So what I have to do is I have to take the $89.91 it will cost me after I have theoretically sold all 108 gnomes. This is what the wood is costing me after that, and divide it by the number of planters, which was 18. So we have a decimal division, but 18 doesn't have a decimal, so this time we don't have to adjust the position of our decimal. And that means the decimal in the answer will be right here. And now we get into our decimal division. 18 does not fit into 8, so I'm not writing a digit here, but 18 will fit into 89. How many times? 4 times. 4 times 18 is 18, 36, 72. 72. And 5 times 18 is not going to work because it's 90. It's just a little too big. So it's 4. So we're going to get a rather large digit over here. We can predict that. 4 times 18 is 72. I subtract. 9 minus 2 is 7. 8 minus 7 is 1. I have 17. I have to carry down this 9. How many times does 18 fit into 179? Well, 180 would be 10, but 179 isn't quite 180, so it's going to be 9. 9 times 18, what's that? 9 times 10 is 90. 9 times 8 is 72. 90 plus 72 is 162. And yes, use your calculator when you need to, but I like to not need to. 9 minus 2 is 7. 7 minus 6 is 1. These ones cancel. I have 17. And this 1 that carries down. So it's going to be another 9, isn't it? Yes. It's still smaller than 180, so it's not 10. It's more than 162, which is what I got with the 9. So I need another 9. And this is going to be 162 again. And 171 minus 62 is 9. 1 minus 2 won't work, so I borrow. 11 minus 2 is 9. Since I borrowed, that 7 turns into a 6. So the 6 is cancelled, the 1's cancelled. At this point, do I want to go one more step? It is money, right? Money divided by number of planters shows how much the wood costs for each planter. But I have to remember, that's if I sold 108 gnomes. But I want to know how this will round. Is it rounding up to $5 even, or is it $4.99? So I want to do one more step. I'll put another 0 here, another 0 there, and oh, it's exactly 5 times 18. That gives 90. Is this fitting on my video rectangle? Yes, it is. Even the 0 fits. Okay, so I'm finished. 4.995, but it's money. So we're rounding that. And it rounds to $5. So that's a beautiful answer. I didn't expect to get such a beautiful round answer. $5 per planter is what the wood is costing me if I sell all of the gnomes. But then I want to make a profit. So I want to charge more than $5. And I may not sell all of the gnomes. So I have to be careful. So I'm deciding I'm going to sell, this is sort of an arbitrary decision, I'm going to sell these pickets. And I'm running out of room to put things. I'm going to put some more information way over here. I said sell pickets, I meant planters. Sell planters for $12.75 each. Okay, so definitely you can see planters like that priced higher than this. So I hope that looks like a bargain. But I'm still going to make a profit even if I don't sell very many gnomes. So I'm finding my spot here and what I want to do. $12.75. Why doesn't he make it a more round number, like $15 or $12 or $13? Why is he messing around with 75 cents? I'll tell you why. Because this is actually a math lesson about decimals. That's why. And I'm allowed to make these decisions for those reasons if I want. Okay, time to do some erasing. And I'm also keeping an eye on the time. I'm reminding students always take a sip of water when you need it with these long math lessons. Do a stretch. That shoulder stretch is extremely important to me, but it wouldn't hurt to do a little ankle stretch, a little knee stretch. And I don't have water, so I'm going to go get some. So we will just play Jeopardy music while I'm running over to the fridge. Do 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 do. Okay, I'm back. So we didn't have to listen to too much Jeopardy music. I have my fizzy water. It's orange cream soda flavor. I needed that. Lots of talking for almost 35 minutes. You wouldn't believe how much water you lose in your breath as you do that much talking. Okay, I'm ready to move on. What's happening next? I want to calculate if I sell the 18 planters for $12.75 each, how much money will that bring in? It's not all profit, we know that. But the first step is to do this calculation. We're taking 18 planters and we're multiplying it by $12.75. So it's a multiplication. We line up the last digits in our numbers. We don't try and line up the decimal. We don't put a decimal here, and then we start going. 8 times 5 is 40. That's 0. Carry the 4. 8 times, looks familiar, doesn't it? Because not long ago I multiplied 108 by 0.75. So 8 times 7, that's going to sound familiar, isn't it? Okay, let's keep going. 8 times 7 is 56, plus the 4 I carried is 60, so I put a 0, I carry a 6. 8 times 2 is 16, plus the 6 I carried is 22. So I write a 2 and I carry a 2. 8 times 1 is 8, plus the 2 I carried is 10. And I'm able to write it all because I got to the end. Now I'm doing the 1, so I need a 0 here. 1 times 5, multiplying by 1 is fun, let's face it. 1 times 7, 1 times 2, and 1 times 1. We're adding these. 0, 0 plus 5 is 5, 2 plus 7 is 9, 0 plus 2 is 2, 1 plus 1, 229.50. 229.50 is the amount of money I will take in if I sell all 18 of those planters at $12.75 each. And that suggests another calculation, doesn't it? Where is it? I have lots of calculations on this page. Let's add to that the amount of money I will bring in if I sold all of the 108 gnomes. So we have 229.50. I didn't show my decimal, so let me finish this. 2 decimal digits means 2 decimal digits. So yes, $229.50. It wasn't $22,950, of course. Okay, 229.50. And I'm finally doing an addition. Plus, it was $81 for the 108 gnomes, another round number that happened by itself. Line up the decimals, put the decimal where your answer decimal will be. 0 plus 0 is 0, 5 plus 0 is 5, 9 plus 1 is 10, so 0 carry the 1. 8 plus 2 is 10, plus the 1 I carried is 11. So 1 carry the 1, and 2 plus the 1 I carried is 3. $310.50 is the total amount of money I will have in my little cash box at the end of the craft fair if I sell everything. And that's pretty good, considering that the point of doing this is so that Bunny and I can use that money to buy more materials and make more crafts. It's a pretty good pile of money to work with, but will I sell everything? That's never happened before. Not to me. Okay. How much of that will be profit? That's a good question. I'm going to do an erase. I'm going to write these two numbers down. 229.50. And that's for the planters. And then 310.50. That's the total, so I'll just write TO for total. Don't have to write the $81 because we already have that down there. So all the information has been recorded. I can erase and I can do my next calculation. How am I doing for time? Getting to 40 minutes, so my lesson plan seems to be reasonable. Erase. Erase. Next question. Oh yes, how much is the actual profit? We see this $310.50, but we can't get too excited about that because we did have to pay for all those pickets. And those pickets cost us $170.91. I have to do a subtraction. $310.50 minus $170.91. Yes. Line up the decimals, it's a subtraction. 0 minus 1 I can't do, I have to borrow, so this turns into a 4, and this 0 turns into a 10. 10 minus 1 is 9. Then 4 minus 9 I can't do, so I have to borrow, but I have a 0 here, so you have to slow down and be careful when that happens. I'm going to borrow this 1, which is going to turn into a 0. That's going to turn this into a 10, but only temporarily, because then I'm going to borrow from it, and it's going to turn into a 9. And that borrowing is going to turn the 4 into a 14. 14 minus 9 is 5. 9 minus 0 I can do. Oh, I need to write my decimal subtraction. I can write it right away. And then 0 minus 7 I can't do. I have to borrow again. So this 3 is turning into a 2. The 0 turns into a 10. 10 minus 7 is 3. And then 2 minus 1 is 1. 139.59. Is that the same answer I got before? Yes. So I probably didn't make a mistake. $139.59 is the actual profit. Now, if I go, now I'm getting it all together in my head. If I go to the big box store, the orange one, and buy the pickets at this price, and I buy 27 of them, then I make as many planters and gnomes as I can, or I make as many planters and Bunny makes as many gnomes as we can from all of that wood. Then we bring it to the craft fair where we sell the gnomes for 75 cents each and sell the planters for $12.75 each. And if everything sells, then we will pull in $310.50, of which $139.59 will be profit. Profit is a nice thing to have, because then I go to the store to buy more stuff, and we're able to buy good stuff and have even more ambitious projects for our next craft fair items. Now, I am going to criticize this whole situation right now, just to be realistic, because I want the situation to be realistic. It means more to students when you're doing calculations for real reasons, instead of just made up situations. So this is really a situation I face. What I'm going to do for the spring craft fair is I am not only going to bring 2 items, planters and gnomes. I'm going to want more than that. So the calculations are going to get more complicated. But I don't have time to go into all of that. I have to come up with some more ideas of interesting spring themed items that I can make and sell, and they don't necessarily all have to be outdoor items. One cool item that I've been looking at is a speaker for your cell phone when you play music on your cell phone. So that's interesting, because that little speaker on the end of a cell phone, it does a fairly good job as a speaker. But if we could gather that sound into some sort of cup shape, it does a much better job as a speaker, and that's something you can make out of wood. I am going to make these. They are wooden items where the phone fits into its spot, and there's an opening just where the little speaker on the phone is, so you place your phone in correctly, and it amplifies the sound, and it makes a pretty good speaker made out of wood. Good idea. I am going to do that. But where are we now in our calculations, in our scenario? In our scenario, that hasn't really happened yet, so yes, I admit I'm making up a lot of it. So I'm making up this. At the fair, turns out I don't sell all of the gnomes or all of the planters. This is the reality of being at a craft fair. At the fair, it turns out that I actually will sell 13 planters. And no, I'm not selling all 108 gnomes. I actually will sell 37 gnomes. It's time to do some recalculating. So first, I'll erase this one. Now, reality has set in. If I sell 13 planters at $12.75 each, well, that puts me in a position where I have to multiply 13 times 12.75. It's a multiplication. Don't write any, line up these digits. Don't write a decimal in the answer yet. 3 times 5 is 15. 5 carried the 1. 3 times 7 is 21 plus the 1 I carried, that's 22. 2 carried the 2. 3 times 2 is 6 plus the 2 I carried is 8. And 3 times 1 is 3. Then I have to have a 0 here. 1 times, well, it's 1 times again. So 1 times 5, 1 times 7, 1 times 2, 1 times 1. I'll add these. 5 plus 0, 2 plus 5, 8 plus 7 carrying a 1. 2 plus 3 is 5 plus the 1 I carried, that's 6. And I have 2 decimal digits. 165.75 is the money I will actually get for selling the 13 planters. But I also sold 37 gnomes. Another decimal multiplication. I need more chalk. I also need, at the time, I also need another sip of this fizzy water. Okay. We're getting there. I'm on my last few calculations. 7 times 5 is 35. Write the 5, carry the 3. 7 times 7 is 49, plus the 3 I carried is 52. Write the 2, carry the 5. But 7 times 0 is 0, plus the 5 I carried is just a 5. Then, I'm doing the 3 now. I need a 0. 3 times 5 is 15. Write the 5, carry the 1. 3 times 7 is 21, plus the 1 I carried is 22. Write the 2, carry the 2. 3 times 0 is 0, plus the 2 I carried is 2. Yep. Add 5 plus 0 is 5. 2. That water's not helping at all, is it? 2 plus 5 is 7. 5 plus 2 is 7. And 0 plus 2 is 2. Decimal digits, 1, 2 decimal digits. So the profit for the gnomes is $27.75. I'm just recording information so I can erase. That decimal needs to be bigger. Okay, let's do an erasing. So you see the type of calculations keep repeating because once I realize that numbers have changed, I have to do certain calculations over again and get different answers. This is like a big giant word problem, isn't it? I have to add those two values, these two, because the profit from the planters plus the profit from the gnomes, I want to know the total. That's not profit. The amount brought in, sales, the sales from the planters plus the sales from the gnomes, I want to know the total sales. So I am taking 165.75, yes, and I'm adding to it 27.75. It's an addition. Line up the decimals. Put the decimal right below in the answer. 5 plus 5 is 10. Write the 0, carry the 1. 7 plus 7 is 14, plus the 1 I carried is 15. Write the 5, carry the 1. 7 plus 5 is 12, plus the 1 I carried is 13. Write the 3, carry the 1. 6 plus 2 is 8, plus the 1 I carried is 9. And then this one just gets brought down. And $193.50 is the total sales if I sold 13 planters and 37 gnomes. And then I want to calculate my profit again. Do I have room? Yes, I do. $193.50 minus, I spent $170.91 on those 27 pickets, remember. 170.91. 0 minus 1 I can't do, I have to borrow, so that 5 becomes a 4. The 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 1 is 9. 4 minus 9 I cannot do, I have to borrow, so the 3 becomes a 2. The 4 becomes a 14. 14 minus 9 is 5. Decimal goes right there, I should have already done that. Then 2 minus 0 I can do. 9 minus 7 I can do. 1 minus 1 cancels. My profit ends up being $22.59. Which is why this is not a business. This is a hobby. Because if it were a business, it would not be a very successful business. There is a good side there that we should mention though. If it all happened this way, sure, I only have $22.59 profit, but I have gotten my $170.91 that I spent before back. So it's like I hadn't spent that after all. I can take that 170.91 plus the 22.59 and I can reinvest it for the next craft fair to buy more materials, and that is what I will do because it is a hobby and all of this is fun for me. And then there's one other nice little thing, and I guess it's calculations, but it's not very decimally, so we'll consider them simple little calculations. I made 27 planters, excuse me, but I sold 13. So therefore I have 14 planters left for the next craft fair. I also made 108 gnomes, and I only sold 37. I'll show this one this way, even though it's not a decimal subtraction, it's a subtraction. 8 minus 7 is 1, 10 minus 3 is 7. I have 71 gnomes left over and 14 planters left over for the next time. So I think what my plans would be are reinvest that money for the wood, plus the profits, buy more wood, make some more different items, maybe the phone speakers and maybe a couple of other things, and just get ready for the next craft fair because this is fun. It's a lot of fun for me, it's a lot of fun for Vanessa. It makes this whole house fun. We are full of craft supplies both indoors and out, and all year we have interesting things that we can do. We can take advantage of these seasonal holidays or just the seasons of the year to figure out what we feel like making, but it very much has to do with what we feel like. It's fun because sometimes I feel like making something like a phone speaker, and then I just go ahead and I make it. And if I make a few of them and I start to get a little bored of making those, well then I feel like making something else. That is all part of the process. I'm not going to make up any extra problems to fill up time because we are getting fairly close to the total hour that I wanted to use. We're at 51 minutes and something. So instead I'm going to say goodbye. This dog is going to say goodbye. Oh, there she is. Oh, she was all comfortable and she's so warm. So say goodbye. The camera's over there. Camera's over there. She has no idea you're here. Okay, anyway, so for me and my comfy little warm dog, I will say goodbye and I will see you next time.